Hello, Theories Theatre 2. Today we're looking at bodies, media and installation. This is the final of our lecture series and recordings for 2016. Today we're going to look at a little bit of theory as well as a taxonomy of the kinds of technological interventions and innovations that we can find in theatre and dance, and also installation. There's quite a bit of footage today, so as you're going through the PowerPoint and my video, anything that isn't of interest you can always skip over in terms of the video, but and I've left those links so that you can view all of it, where it's really quite long. But most of the clips are short, and some of them are marketing material because that's the only way that I can get access to footage. So I'll start. Thanks for listening, and I'll appear at the end of the video once again to say goodbye. Okay, so in slide number 1, here we have a picture of inventor Charles Babbage's difference engine. Babbage designed the first automatic computing engine in 1822, but never lived to actually build it. The machine was finished in 2002 in London, some 150 years after it was designed. The machine has 25,000 parts, weighs 15 tonnes, and is 8 foot high, and is very beautiful, as we can see from this image. With all its cogs, wheels and pulleys, we can clearly see the genesis of digital technology in the material processes and forces of a mechanical machine. The difference engine was invented to overcome the tedium of manually checking calculations, thus constituting the first mechanical computer to quicken and make accurate the calculation of data. Now you may be asking, what has this history to do with performance and theatre? According to historian Felicia McCarran, Charles Babbage was enamoured by these little dolls called automata. Automata were mechanised figures possessing complex movement. You can see a little one here called The Smoker by Lambert in 1800s. It's quite frightening, really, isn't it? It's one of those dolls that you don't want in your bedroom and or even in your cupboard at night. Automata were mechanised figures possessing complex movement. They were made to imitate or parody life, and in the 1800s were considered to be miniature people. My goodness. McCarran reports that it was a dancing lady by automaton designer John Merlin in the 1820s that inspired Babbage's work on the difference engine. Babbage goes on to describe his fascination with the miniature dancer from his first encounter. A true 1800s plushie, but I won't go into that. He says the lady attitudinised, a word we don't use very often anymore, if ever at all, in a most fascinating manner. Her eyes were full of imagination and irresistible. So upon meeting the little lady, Babbage took her home and dressed her up. Babbage's dancing doll was understood to be a dancer and not just a doll dancing. Movement was, by all reports, the inspiration for his designs and construction of the early modern computer. Therefore, the introduction of machines and media into performance, from its most earliest evidence of light projections and film introduced into live stage performances, and the chapter that I set for this week by Steve Dixon looks at that history, and particularly in a period of time that where innovation was quite, let's just say, historically hasn't been cited so much after the 1930s, after World War II. To highly sophisticated digital interactive systems where the machine response is argued to be emergent. And we're going to have a look at some of those videos or footage of works where we have these much more sophisticated interactive systems. So the introduction of machines and new media into performance was neither an awkward nor trivial communion. However, the use of technology in performance has raised many a theoretical challenge. The most famous and paradoxically useless, while at the same time necessary, debate is the one between proponents of the live and proponents of the mediatized. Liveness versus mediatization. The well-known live and mediatized debate proliferated with the 1999 publication of Philip Auslander's seminal text, Liveness, Performance in a Mediatized Culture. Auslander here and much earlier claimed that there is no ontological distinction between live and mediatized forms because they participate in the same cultural economy. Auslander's position is a reactionary one, is his position. He challenges the claim of those who view liveness as necessarily and ontologically distinct from mediatized events. Proponents of liveness venerate the live in its ability to disappear, leaving no visible trace afterward. And the main proponent and, I guess, antagonizer of Auslander is Peggy Phelan, who you would have come across with, in your other courses, I'm assuming, anyway. And for proponents of the live, they said that liveness can be described as original, authentic, immediate, and truthful. It's conceived as a place of political and ideological resistance in a capitalist cultural economy, for the flesh and blood performer standing present with bona fide presence, sharing this moment with an equally live audience. Now, I have spoken about this when we looked at performance art and the moment that the body became a very important force against those market forces in gallery spaces. On this view, live performance overcomes all forms of reproduction, repetition and distribution, which reportedly characterize the malevolent logic and forces of a capitalist society manifested in recorded performance. Even though the debate between Phelan and Auslander revolves around the question of political resistance and or transgression in a capitalist cultural economy, the claim in and of itself provokes a problem of experience, really, rather than one, the efficacy of political art. But not dismissing the importance and necessity of a cultural capitalist critique, which I'm all for, from an aesthetic point of view, it seems more constructive to inquire into the differing experiences that are found in live and the mediatized performances as a starting point. For example, in a dance performance where technological media is involved, the corporeality of a breathing, perspiring performer's body is constituted with great qualitative differences to its distributed, two-dimensional projected image on a screen for the audience member. To conflate a live thing with a mediatized thing on the basis of a political claim is by all accounts counterintuitive, and at the very least requires some examination. Auslander's claim that there is no ontological distinction between the live and mediatized is categorically problematic if it dismisses an investigation into the experiences. And to ignore the shared aspects between the two, as proponents of the live would have it, is equally conceptually myopic. So, what appears to be two opposing fields of experience, the corporeal or live on the one hand, and the virtual, technologically mediated or mediatized on the other, are in fact closer in their ontological emergence. That is, closer in what they are and how they become in their constitution as performance events that are technologically mediated. So what do we have here? A dystopic view. So this is especially more so with some scholars who have this dystopic view on technology. And they wish to basically, a dystopic view of technology is in line with, well, it's the opposite to a utopic vision, of course, which is the ideal place. A dystopic view is not a good place. It's where society is controlled by technology. I mean, there are other dystopias that we can speak of, political ones or religious or philosophical ones. But the one where we're sort of the imaginary that we're dealing with here, or the fear, is a technological one. And in the groups that really hold a dystopic view in history are, and you may have come across this word, are Luddites. Now, we talk about being a neo-Luddite. Often that's used in everyday parlance to, especially of my generation or older, who are not very good with machines, for example, computer technology, and they say, oh, I'm a neo-Luddite. And that really is a suspicion and a concern of technologies that grew, in fact, out of the post-war labour movements. So the, industrialisation en masse. And, I mean, today we can certainly understand the dystopic view that about robot, the robot warriors in the military, the role of big data, and issues of internet security in our lives. Another sort of concern is the issues for environment, which how technology and what it, how it's plundered our natural world. And this was particularly heightened after the horrors of World War I and World War II, with theorists like Martin Heidegger, who questioned the ontology of technology, the what of technology. And he suggested, and it was conceptualized, that technology was in fact the essence of man, and that in itself is the danger, because given human nature and what it's capable of, what happens to that that technology, if it is indeed the essence of man, something else. So there's quite a lot of literature on dystopic views of technology. They creep into a lot of the criticisms of even technology use in the theatre. But what we have to offset that is, of course, a different, more enthusiastic view, which is the cyborgian imagination. And it has its roots in earlier pursuits to recreate the human mind in a machine. So what do I mean by cyborg here? Well, there's no real clear-cut definition, but one sees it as a kind of hybrid assemblage of technological parts in the human at varying degrees. I mean, this is quite observably intense with what Stellark has, how he's taken up the cyborgian imagination. But we can even think about the everyday cyborg technologies, and some theorists say this is definitely part of the cyborg imagination, is technologies such as pacemakers that keep the heart pumping, telephones, so our mobile devices stuck to our ear all the time, a cyborgian extension. They distally extend our communication possibilities. Bicycles, automobiles, walking sticks, and spectacles. So, this idea of technology not just being digital, but a tool that extends the body and enables it in some way. Due to the pragmatic need for automation to ease the burden of manual labour in a variety of industry, there was a strong emphasis within machine design then, following this, on emergent independent thinking behaviours in machine systems. So the idea of the cybernetic, or even crossing into artificial intelligence. So we've got here Stellark's Ear on Arm, and we talked about this in the performance art lecture. And it's for those who didn't attend that lecture or didn't listen to the recording, it was a permanent modification of the body's architecture for Stellark. It was a prosthesis using his own skin that he'd cultured, well, basically from his own cells. And the aim was to perform telematically, transmit this to transmit the sound that it indeed could hear. But as I said in the other lecture, it failed to work, and really it's become a sculpture on his arm. The second one there is an earlier work from 1980, and this is, his sort of first investigations of robotics, and he calls this the third hand, and it was made of cast latex aluminium cables and a battery pack, and it worked by picking up on the muscle movements from the legs and arms. One of the main themes for Stellark, and it's quite continuous with his investigations and research, and which result mostly in artworks, that was the inadequacy of the human body, and how computers, being a major part of are a part of everyone's lives. So really this entwinement between machine and human, being something not to be terrified about, but something to indeed enhance what it is to be human, and and not just any kind of human, a kind of excessive human. So if humans and machines are so entangled, so intricable, ever since man first designed the wheel, the mere fact is that we are the designers and builders of these machines, produced for a variety of purposes, from survival and progress of civilization to the most aestheticized and transcendent experiences. The human race has no choice but to find more meaningful relationships with machines as we make them faster, smaller, more intelligent, and more automated. But what interests us in today's lecture is where performance promotes this entanglement between humans and machines. So it's going to be largely about celebrating it than critiquing it, though certainly critiquing technology and performance is something that also needs to be done, given the poor use of it. Often, just this, throwaway, just because it's there, we're gonna use it, or because we know how to use it so well. Often this overshadows the workings of the performance itself. Therefore, a complete compromise of its dramaturgy. And so, my solution has always been, or suggestion has been, a very to develop a strong digital dramaturgy. And if people are interested in that, I have published on that. So, if you wanted to have a look. So what interests us in today's lecture is where performance promotes this entanglement between humans and machines, and more precisely, our transcendent and aesthetic experiences, performers and spectators involved in dance technology events. And so this is important about how the study of this relationship can then feed back into the making. It's not all about just standing back and either documenting or critiquing. There's all, at this level one can do that, and then most definitely bring it back into a better kind of making. So quite a positive approach to the study of dance and technology. So if we're on the more positive side here of technology use and performance, the question here about mediatic transcendence, comes to the fore. And in this context, the theatre context, transcendence means the way in which technology permits us to step out from the immediacy of the flesh, the here and now, through a multifaceted manipulation of time, space, and place. And what we are interested in this going beyond the flesh through mediatic transcendence, the going beyond, is what time, space, and place will then mean to us after that we have those experiences. Is it just, distorted time, space, and place, extended, expanded, and contracted? Time and space are elements that reconfigure the dimensions of a corporeal body. The perception changes things. A presence fragmented, embellished, or distally extended. Bodies moving with media all expand our definition of performance, redefining the themes of embodiment, presence, and corporeality, and what all those things can mean in any performance event. So here we have in the picture, the one on the left is just to evoke some of the ideas of exploding the mind, going beyond the flesh and blood experiences. This is not to say it's irreal. That's a whole other kind of argument about the difference between whether virtual reality is real or it isn't. It is real. It's just an altered or augmented reality, and there we have people with the headsets on, quite isolated. Although they're holding hands there, and having their own little journeys and visual world, but a visual kind of embodied, connected world, depending on how well the virtual reality device manages to do that for you. Thus, performance is a field where the relationship between bodies and machines are explored in meaningful and innovative ways. So we're now going to fly through the taxonomy. There's a number of different ways technology is used in the theatre, and I've tried to group them and make it as clear-cut as possible, and I probably haven't included everything, so apologies for that, but we do only have really supposedly an hour, but with all the video material it's going to go over anyway. So let's begin. If we think of live performance technology events, a live performance technology event can involve the most simple relation of just lights. So, and this takes us back in history a little, and in particular, we're going to take a look now at the use of many lights with spinning movements, and the idea of technological transparency. And technological transparency is when you see the technology. Often it'll be hidden. Other times it won't be, and that's a real question around how much of that will alter the perception. And practitioners play around with that a lot, whether to keep it transparent or to really try and bury it within the unity of the experience and hide it. So the clip we're going to look at is a clip from, it was recorded in 1896 and it has been touched up. It was originally a work by Louis Fuller, choreographer, dancer, called Dance Serpentine. She was a contemporary of Isadora Duncan, who I'm sure you've all heard of. She worked with the new technology of the day, which was electricity, to create performances that spun her body into constantly changing coloured shapes. Wearing large, semi-transparent gauze robes and holding long batons in her hands, extending the length of her arms and consequently the surface area of the material for light reflection, she would spin in and out of the regions of light that conjured, and I quote, metaphors of clouds, butterflies, and dancing fire. Multicoloured lights were projected in at every direction, even from beneath her feet. And this is for you tech people out there and lighting people. She used 17 electricians for over 50 lamps in one performance. So you can see how serious Fuller was in engaging that technology of the day. So let's have a look at the video. So the next simple but step up from lights is the use of projections. And the way we can project in the theatre is, or in performance, is use of scrims, multiple surfaces at various orientations, the use of water. And if you read the Dixon article, you'd remember in there where he talks about the earliest use of water or waterfall as a projection surface in Frederick Keisler's version of Rossum's Universal Robots, which was a science fiction play. But the story was that the Berlin police were worried about a fire hazard, and so there was a trough of water put above the projector, and creating a fall of water. So this is what, by happenstance, created this new way of viewing the film projections. Another is the body as a screen, and we see that often in performance, and it's becoming far and far more let's just say sophisticated. Yes, becoming more sophisticated. In fact, I have a clip of the Australian group Stalker, and in a couple of in a few more slides, and you'll see there the use of a little sort of bodysuit that projects onto the body at close range, and it's quite mesmerising, the effect that it makes. Projections onto everyday objects, and also what's projected is just images, film, text, footage that's pre-recorded, or it's live streaming. Live streaming that can be manipulated through playback, or it's just left to stream. And this is usually what VJs do, or multimedia artists that you work with the kind of VJing techniques through software like Isadora software, if people have heard of that. It was founded by a guy called Mark Caniglio from Portland in the US, and he has, in fact, I think I've got an image there of Troika Ranch, was the group that really explored his audiovisual software, Isadora, with dancing bodies. Another is holographic type effects, where you indeed create digital doubles, and which involve kind of these interactions between a physical live body on stage and a digital double of that person, or maybe it's another entity, and where they can even have where they can have touch, and so digital touch being an aspect of performance technology events that you don't get in just pure live theatre. So let's, in terms of projections, look at the theatre first. And I'll show you a clip by Canadian artist Robert Lepage, the Ex Machina Multimedia Company. And this was a work that I saw in 2009 when it came to Sydney Festival. It's called Lip Sync. Unfortunately, the footage isn't great, but you get a sense of how huge this production was, and it was really a mixture of projection and audio, but stage assemblage was incredible. In fact, the crew moving those stage flats outnumbered the cast. So you'll sort of get a sense maybe from the video. I can't, without buying the footage, it's really difficult to get hold of his work. So he's responsible for the ultimate manufacture of stage illusion. He uses, and I quote, "a panoply of technological devices uniting the live material and recorded. His sets revolve, they fold, they shift, they move on and off, carried by a team of people," disclosing Lepage's intimate worlds. He really engages the Gesamtkunstwerk, or total work, the Wagnerian total work of art. But media is an equally strong player as text, voice, set, and lighting, and the rest. So in Lip Sync, telephone, radio, soundtracks and silent films, playback and post-synchronization, with singing voices, synthesized voices, voices of the conscience, voices of blood relatives, voices from beyond, hallucinated voices. 9 stories unfold in 9 hours. Yes, I was at the theatre for 9 hours. You could go out and have breaks and whatnot, but it was quite an epic attendance. Focusing on 9 protagonists and whose lives answer, relay and echo each other. So here we go. We're going to have a look at the video now. Okay, so in fact, the stalker videos now, it was when I was talking about the projections that have a really close proximity in these suits. Going to play it right now. Stalker are an Australian physical theatre company. In fact, I used to work for them, not as a performer, but I used to help with um, some of their research. And the work that they've made here encoded is quite, in terms of projection, is probably one of the most sophisticated that's around at the moment. It was designed in collaboration with university. It's quite difficult to understand, and I've worked a lot on technology, and I feel that it's underexplained. But I'll give you what they say. They say they're simulated fluid animations of particles and architecture that act as a mediating layer between the performer's gestures, like their physical gestures, and the images and sounds they generate, thus blurring the boundaries between digital and physical space. So that was the inquiry for this particular piece, Encoded, that was made in 2012 and has done some touring, and they've had different instantiation cells around the place. And I'm just going to play a short clip of that, but you can watch the full clip if you're interested. The choreography doesn't quite meet, that's my criticism of the work, doesn't really meet the media, and this is a problem often with performance technology events. They get made separately, and I know with this work that the technology was they were really on the edge of creating that as they went along, and so there is a bit of dislocation there, but it's still very spectacular, and certainly when you're in the space, because of the scale mostly, and the way that the particles of the projections themselves move. So let's have a look at that. So at the bottom of this slide, I've just put here the names of the two clips that you just looked at, and the links that you can go to if you wanted to look at the full clip of Stalker in particular. So moving on to what we call simulacrum technologies. And simulacrum technologies are immersive, responsive environments that are digitally rendered experiences. And so it's pretty much encompasses most interaction systems or installations where there is some sort of form of either infrared movement tracking, through cameras or Connect devices, or motion capture is another. So if it's the camera tracking isn't coded in a way that's just tracking blobs in space, perhaps it's points on the body, and so both with motion capture or just tracking systems, often a stage space will be divided into sections, and that body or an object triggers the algorithmic function for that section in the computer, and which is what we call the input function. So what it picks up, and then what the output that it provokes, either a visual projection, an audio, or even a kinetic based, which is some of the research in performance technology is moving away from two-dimensional projections and more into 3D sculptural works that in fact move the movement of the performer. So there's this. So the interaction is mediated through these same sort of devices and input-output systems as the old sort of camera tracking. Well, I say old, but the tracking systems that permitted the two-dimensional projections. So we're going to have a look. Best thing to do is to have a look at these things. It's a lot of language and very specific technological language, and it's even more frightening than the way that I'm talking about it. So I'll just put that up on screen so you do have that. So the tracking-based system, I think this is a really great example. I've done quite a bit of work on this myself as a scholar, is a tracking-based system for interactive dance with generated response of projected visual material. And it's Gideon Obarzanek. He used to be the artistic director, Chunky Move. It's now a woman from Belgium called Anouk. And Freda Wies, who is from ZKM, he's a programmer. And usually in this, again, in dance and technology events or performance technology events, when the system is so critical to the creative process, it is in fact it's not just background wallpaper to dance in front of. The programmer is part of the creative team. It's not crew. They're not crew, and they're just as critical and important. So Melbourne-based company Chunky Move's production Glow, which premiered in 2007, was choreographed by Gideon Obarzanek in collaboration with Freda Wies. It's a solo dance performance lit overhead by a single data projector, and it's viewed from above by the audience from a square-shaped mezzanine balcony. Well, this is the way that I saw it. An overhead camera tracking system films the movement, position in space and speed of the dancer, and then feeds this into the computer as real-time data. From that data, the computer runs a series of algorithms that are queued up, providing a graphic-generated response in the form of moving projections onto the dancer in stage space. So this is how it happens, in the least technical terms possible. The projections are predetermined visualizations, but rely upon the movement and position of the dancer to trigger the system. The overall interaction between dancer and system is a symbiotic result of the dancer responding visually and spatially to the generation of graphics, while simultaneously the output of graphics is determined by these movement choices. So there is this determination, but the interaction between the two really sort of creates an ambiguity about what is causing what's provoking what. And this is where the work, especially Chunky Moves work, because they did a second work here, or was an advice, called Mortal Engine, and they were really hoping to make the work as the technology as emergent as possible in this relationship with the dancers. And the result of that was really, for me and my spectatorship, was like a giant laser show, and the bodies became completely engulfed and lost. And it could have been because of the bad seating, but still, when you're making these works, you have to be so precise, and not just precise, but there's an ethical consideration to be had about what the spectator can see. Not always, because sometimes not seeing is something, but with this, you've got to care about where you put people in a theatre for them to really appreciate this relationship between the two. If you look at Mortal Engine online, the video of that, it looks great, but it's because there's a camera overhead with where the tracking system is, and you see it beautifully. But the live version of it was really disappointing, unless you probably had front row seats smack bang in the middle. So let's have a look at this video, and then we'll move on. So here's oh, to take that back, here is the name of the piece that you just viewed. I'll have to put the link in this PowerPoint before, and I'll put that up separately to the video. But then you can probably see it from when you open the YouTube, I guess. I'm assuming that's what happens. So apologies about that. More simulacrum-based technologies that are used in performance, just wearable, so devices that are on the body or in costume, and that record the motion and feed the algorithms into a computer. So that's another way of tracking movement. I don't have an example for that. If I show you examples for all of this, we're going to be here all night. The second simulacrum version of this immersive aspect of experiencing technology, virtual reality systems. And we have Google or suit-based, Google, oh my God, I've got Google. It's Goggle or suit-based. And it can either create, and the question is whether it creates an embodied or a disembodied experience. And you'll get two sides of an argument there that say that it's all mental, and the feeling of the body drops away, so you don't feel like you're actually the body's in time and space with this augmented reality. Whereas other schools of thought say no, if the virtual reality is very good, then you're going to have a full-bodied experience. And I'm trying to think of the Cronenberg film Existence is a really good experience of, like absolute embodiment, where it's really it's a sci-fi, a great sci-fi, by the way, if people are interested in sci-fis, to really feel like you're completely transported to time, space, place. And often in virtual reality, in a virtual reality system, you'll move in an installation space, or you'll be seated like we saw in that photo of those people. Now, the third is an iPad tablet theatre, which are immersive installations, and a visitor will move with the device in a physical space designed for performance. And it may or may not replicate the pre-recorded footage, like the space that's there. And I'm going to show you an example of that. But you did, for those of you that did go to Fola, you all went to Fola, of course you did, but that were there, I think it was the first week, maybe it was the second one, with Tamara Sawick and Peter Knight's work, Alter, that was in the club that was out the back, and you went to the black space, and there were 16 iPads and just 16 of you moving around the space with these iPads. So let me just show you an example of a work that was made in 2010 by Fish and Game, who are Scottish practitioners, and the work's called Alma Mater. I'm playing the full clip, so, and it's a promo clip, which is unfortunate, but you get a sense of hopefully what is happening in this work. And I'll just read their blurb. It says, individual audience members enter a specially constructed full-scale child's bedroom. So the opening scene where you see them go in the door, they stay in that room. And they immerse themselves in the world of a little girl in a 21st century fairy tale via an iPad. The film is shot to a cinematic quality, and you can see that from certainly from the video, and moves through the space, requiring the audience to move with it in this room. I guess it's really hard. There's some reviews on this if you were... there's one by John Bailey in real time that describes, and possibly others from where this work has been. It's supposedly really amazing experience, even though it's difficult to think that it would be. And even with the Alter work at Fola, there wasn't a sense of complete immersion, and maybe it was because we were moved around and we didn't have to look at the screen continuously. But it would be fantastic to try this work, but it was 2010, and it was here for a short time only. So let's take a look at it. Okay, so here's the detail of the iPad tablet theatre and the alma mater that you just looked at. Moving right along. So the other kinds of ways of describing these technologies, we had the simulacrum. Now the second is the distal or remote technologies. And usually that means that the performer and the audience are spatially remote but temporally connected. And the main kind of exploration of that is in internet or network performance, where performances connect performer there and audience here, or all the way around, in the now. And often screen projection based or device based with mobile technologies. They network distributed communication and permit community participation in stage projects. Now, this is being done a lot. Blast Theory in the UK, I won't show you a clip of those, but you can go on their website, and they really make use of. They work with a lot of gaming technologies, but they also work with kind of network performance and distributed communication through sort of a game emphasis, and they often engage small members of the public who come and sign up and work with them in different ways. Lots of community participation. But the two I want to show you is, the first is by the Builders Association, director Marianne Weems, a work from 2007 called Continuous Cities. I'm going to show you a short excerpt of that. And Continuous City, and you can watch the rest, if you want to. Continuous City is a meditation on how contemporary experiences of location and dislocation stretch us to the maximum as our networked selves, occupying multiple locations. And so let's take a look at that, and then I'll come back to the second one. But before I go, here is the notes from what I just spoke about. Here we are.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, do you want me to?
Yes, I do. But actually, I'm going to be out of town next week, so a little tight.
Well, I could come another week, whatever's convenient.
Yeah, Helen.
What? You don't want me to come?
I do. I mean that. I want you to come. But it's just that it's kind of a big commitment, don't you think?
What is?
Being in the same city.
That's a big commitment.
Hello? Anybody home? Hey Sam, it's me. I'm in Guadalajara, which is Mexico. Hey, wow. Hey, why don't we get some lunch? What about dessert first? I know who likes chocolate cake.
Vanilla's better.
Okay, well, there's your vanilla.
Yum.
Yeah? And, some churros for me. And, would you like rainbow sprinkles on yours, madame?
They're okay.
Okay.
Okay, so that was an example of where internet technology, Skype technology, Skype communication technology is used in a theatre context. The next one is by Wafa Bilal, an Iraqi artist, called Domestic Tension. And basically, this is an example of the audience being connected remotely to the artwork via an internet site. And the internet site was called Shoot an Iraqi. And basically, in a studio space, he had set up a paintball gun that was programmed to be released. It would shoot when an audience from somewhere accessing that site would shoot at Wafa, who was in the space. Obviously, he didn't take all the shots, and you'll see from you just see from the room that he's behind a piece of perspex during the performance. What's really frightening about, I mean, he made this work during the War on Terror, and what it exposed was, beside the fact that he was shot 60,000 times in 30 days, or 31 days, in fact, just the general attitude towards the Iraqi people at that particular moment in time, the kind of the level of anonymity that someone can have in exercising their feelings of potentially their feelings of distrust and anger after 9/11. But I told my son about this artwork, and he said, "Oh, I would have done it," because he plays games. He's a huge gamer, and potentially and he said, because it's fun, and it's maybe that's why there were so many shots and fired as well, rather than a disclosure of attitudes at such an immense number. So here we go. Let's take a look at. It's a documentary where the artist speaks, and it's short. And then I haven't got the link, but there's another one where you actually see the paintball in action if you wanted to have a look at that, and it'll come up after in the YouTube if you put the link in later, if you're interested in Wafa Bilial's work.
In 2004, I received devastating news that my brother Haji was killed in Kufa, our hometown in Iraq. And 2 months later, we lost our father of grief over our brother Haji. Since then, I was thinking of building an art project that engage people, and not necessarily in a gallery, but using the media that's available to us, which was the internet. And I kept thinking about the project until 2007, when a new segment gave me the idea to build that project. It was a soldier sitting in Colorado directing drone planes and dropping missiles on Iraq. And when she was asked whether she has any regret over the life of Iraqis, she said, "No, these people are terrorists and I trust my government." And it hit me right away that we become so disconnected from the conflict zone when we live in our own comfort zone. And that gave me the idea. The idea was called Shoot an Iraqi. I would lock myself in a gallery for 30 days and with a paintball gun aimed at me, and the paintball gun is controlled by the people online. To my surprise, 30 days later, I was shot 60,000 times, and 138 countries participated with 80 million hits on the website. And in that project as well, we had chat room, and we ended up with 33,000 pages. And somebody in that room, in the chat room, wrote, "No matter who you are coming into this project, you will be a changed person." This project changed my life forever, and it gave me hope in humanity, and it gave me hope that when we build a platform for people to have a conversation, they will come and participate.
And so there is a link for Wafabilia. And the next distal remote type of performance is a telematic performance, and that's usually audio-visual connections between remote sites. It's a little different to the internet one. It permits for a play across absence and presence, where the human senses of intimacy and physical connection are dependent on playing across what is revealed and what is concealed, rather than simply on what is visually displayed. So an example of this, and I don't have footage of it, is a work by Paul Sermon from 1999. So quite old now, but the idea of the telematic here is very not significant, but emphasised. And basically what happened in this performance is that a woman called Susan Kozel, who's an academic and an artist, she was in a bed in one room being recorded. Her image was being projected onto another bed in another room. So this was an installation of 2 rooms with 2 beds. They were physically separated, but telematically connected through image. There was another camera recording her image on the bed in the other room. So when a visitor came in and sat in on the bed, she could, through a TV monitor, see her image interacting with the visitor on the bed. And so she did this for quite some time, and she wrote a book, a book on this, not all of this production, but what her experiences were of that. And the book's called Closer. And she was able, this idea of the absence and presence, she was able to see her play around with her body at a sort of distance, coming in and out of the screen, and in and off the bed, so she could really it's sort of like I guess puppeteering in a way, her own self, because the feedback of what she sees when she's moving, was informing the movement, and apparently the interactions she had, there were violent ones where someone stabbed her with a knife, or her projected image, and another one where a visitor had fallen in love with her image and kept coming back, presenting her with gifts. So quite a striking work, quite an old work, but I think it's the idea of the telematic being really very intimate in terms of what can be created between a corporeal body and visual media, and the kinds of meaningful encounters of touch or digital touch that can be created from that. So the next one in our taxonomy, there's the points for telematic performance, is drone performance. Now, the drones have been taking off in visual art and performance. A lot of it is a bit ho-hum, and often it's the use of these, what are, as we all know, surveillance and military devices to record footage from overhead, and then used live or as pre-recorded footage in a performance. So often, you can get a live feed of the performer. Some of the versions I've seen, maybe from pre-recorded somewhere in another location before, or in real time, which means at the same time as the performance is happening, and then projected. That image footage is projected onto the screen. But what I've seen of that hasn't been all that exciting. They can be they can be distally driven by another performer. So, in fact, you could, a little bit like Wafaa Bilial, have audience members somehow operating the drone, which is pretty much how drones are consequently used in warfare, and or really sophisticated use of algorithms for the computer to work interactively with the dancers, which is what I think is probably for a stage performance looks much more interesting. And I have an example from a group called 11 Play, who are the choreographers and dancers, and Rhizomatics. So it's a collaboration between 11 Play and Rhizomatics. So Rhizomatics are the programmers. And in this clip, you're going to see 3 performers, live performers, performing with 24 drones. And so it's quite beautiful, some of the interaction that they have. In this work, objects are arranged 3-dimensionally in real space through a tracking technology and drone control system. The camera tracking system picks up the dancers more intuitively between the body and data through computer-controlled drones. There are 2 kinds of drone movements, and this is kind of where I think it's interesting. This idea of the drone movement, a motion produced by tracking a dancer's movement, or the artificial motion operated on the software, rather than this idea of the filming or this kind of surveillance use that drones are used in the world today. They've really attempted to see the flying object, use this flying object in order to be another dancer on stage or performer on stage. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so here is the notes from what I just spoke about and the video that you just saw. The last one is the use of robots and prosthesis, and I'm not going to, because we looked at Stellark, I won't show the robot theatre performance, but basically it's the idea of projecting the body beyond normal embodiment, definitely with prosthesis, extending and amplifying limbs and movement, and it draws on medical, military and sporting technologies that enhance mixed mobilities. So let's move on to installation. Installation is a 21st practice that steps away from the constraints of the theatre and where there's an emphasis on the spectator's immersion. Here we have Billy Liu in a gallery space here, the Mending Project. And so they're all scissors, as you can see, suspended from the ceiling. It's quite beautiful, really. And the shadow that it casts there. And so she's interacting as a performer in that space. But still, we're really in the gallery here with installation. And the audience really are just viewers, passive viewers to that. When it comes to more performance installation, experiences are open-ended. Spectators ideally become the authors and generators of their own meanings. Jonathan Carey says that the removal of frames separating stage from auditorium brings together the spheres of making and viewing. So we looked at site-specific performance the other week, and a lot of those aspects of site-specific performance can be certainly flow into installation, depending where the installation is, because installation, often in site-specific work, we create an installation or environment for the performance to happen. So there are the notes from that. But I should show you this first. This was a white room. Yayoi Kusama. It's a work called Obliteration Room. It was at the Tate Modern in 2012. Now, Yayoi is an artist who has been around since the 60s, so she went through, pretty much was participating in all those movements that we've looked at. Fluxus, happenings, she was definitely participating in some of those exhibitions and was around at that time. And this was a white room, completely white room. Everything was pure white, and then audience members could come in and use these sticker dots to just put their stickers wherever they felt. There was no rules other than just sticking a sticker. And so this happened in the Tate Modern in 2012. There's a video that I've from the Tate Modern that you can take a look at, and it's sort of shows the progression of this room from being purely white to looking like splatter. But the dot, the coloured dot, is really Yayoi's signature, and all her works have something of what we call the pointillance, really, in all her works. And these are the notes over the top, what I was just talking about. So the Obliteration Room is a real example of participatory installation where there's a single rule, and use some stickers, and which involves a lot of people walking in and out and doing whatever. Now, other sort of audience participation, but still in a gallery setting, is another one that I actually went to in 2009 at the Tate Modern, called How It Is, by Polish artist Miroslav Belka. And it was a giant container in the Turbine Hall. I know some of you have probably been to the Tate Modern. If you do go to London and you haven't been, you must go. And it's 30 meters long. It was 30 meters long and 13 meters high, and basically all that you had to do was just to walk into the blackness. And it sounds simple and may ask what of it, but the experience was perceptually really significant for me. I wasn't expecting to have to really lose a sense of where I was, the floor, ceiling. People were freaking out a bit. So what happens is when people freak out, they get their friggin' mobile phones out. So create light, which, was a bit ruinous to the experience. And there was a kind of almost anti-gravitational feeling, pull on the body as you walked. A little bit like if you go into a deprivation chamber, where it's just complete blackness. So it was echoing that, I guess. But because there were all other bodies around, and there was the flashes of light from people using their mobile phones and taking photos and being stupid, ruining it for everyone else, you couldn't really get the full effect of that. But and I guess the reason why I wanted to talk about that and even show the Obliteration Room is, even at a gallery, what happens in theatre, and how we can take this idea of installation into either site, or just into the auditorium, even with a seated audience. I mean, how do you create the atmosphere? How do you visually and not visually, let's say sensorially, affect your audience members, rather than just thinking about the way that one element of the performance might affect the experience, thinking through a way of the tapestry of elements that affect every sense of the audience member in some very deepened and altered way. I mean, you don't have to do that, of course, but I've just the use of the ideas of installation art can certainly carry over to the theatre in very, very significant ways, and help with transporting what it is you wish the audience to be transported to. Okay, so now we're going to move on to some questions. That just a set of questions, and I'm going to speak to these questions. And then there's also at the end an essay question if people were getting late to their essays and would like to do something on media, or it could even help with answering one of the other questions that are set on post-traumatic performance. Now, there are countless ways to set up systems with combinations of technological software and hardware, and I think the taxonomy that I've shown you in brief, demonstrates that. This is part of the creativity and aesthetic force of the event, and one aspect of what Peter Benish terms intermediation. There are many other concepts employed to understand these relationships, and Chris Salter talks about entanglement. Josephine Macon talks about intersensual practice, and synesthetic style, celebrating the play between and flux within the linguistic, visual, oral, and technological. So there's, constantly myriad ways of trying to conceptualize these experiences between bodies and media, and so we can employ a whole different range of aesthetic frames in order to do that. Maybe we go with Lehman's 11 stylistic traits in order to understand what's going on stage. Susan Broadhurst is one theorist who she works with a bit of a mix of postmodern theory, a bit of neuroaesthetic science, and phenomenology. So she's really trying to come up with a frame that's going to keep up with what's being demonstrated in performance and theatre with the relationship of technology and bodies. Because she says, she argues mostly that the traditional and contemporary critical and aesthetic theories are ultimately deficient in interpreting these kinds of performances. Performances which she calls, in her last book that she wrote, liminal performance. And we know about liminal performance from Schechner, but for her it's, she describes as a range of interdisciplinary, highly experimental performative works that prioritise both the body and the technological. So that's what she calls liminal performance, and I think her book's called Liminal Performance, but and it's in the library. So the second question is, what kind of experiences are we having when we watch and or participate in these events? This is really a question of asking, where are we as audience members? Where are we spatially, temporally, in relationship to the performers and outputs of the mediatic system? So this is a question of from the perspective of audience. And often technology events require a roving, participatory and immersed audience, especially if there's an installation aspect to those works, and you're not sort of chair bound, having projection or laser shows. And often audiences will share the same physical space, and their actual presence, bodily presence, is responsible for triggering the system and the outcome of the performance. Next question is, what type of interactivity is evident? Where is it occurring? How is it occurring? Now, what does interaction mean? Well, the premise is say, a relationship between two things, say X and Y, where something changes for both X and Y as a result of this encounter. So I think that's fairly an important premise to keep in mind, a relationship between two disparate things, and where something, when they come into action, changes because of that encounter. So interactivity itself has become a bit of a buzzword, and it often gets misused in performance contexts. A roving audience that is able to get close to the action does not necessarily have any impact on the way the system or the dance functions. The performance will unfold as intended despite the proximity of the audience. So often people might use it, if the audience is roaming about or in promenade, it's interaction, because there could be an interaction because the audience are up and but it's not really intended that they're going to change something in the performance. Next is, how are the moving bodies aided, enriched, or made absent in their relationship with the technology? So what is happening to the bodies in this relationship? Are they extended? Are they made more significant, meaningful in their doubling as a screen presence? Or are the bodies absent? And I gave that example of Mortal Engine, where the live bodies themselves disappeared. And so the live performance with this very extremely sophisticated technology was completely obliterated. the dancer's presence obliterated. We couldn't get a sense of that. The next one is, how do our bodies feel? How does the technology expand our imagination? A lot of writing and descriptions about these events come from the performer maker, and few writings are the result of analysing the experience of audience in these technology events. The success of digital performance making lies with understanding how these encounters, interactions are experienced, perceived by the audience, because why would you have an augmented performance using technology? It doesn't make sense. And so really these events become a privileging of audience experience in performance aesthetics. And this appears to be a more active concern in interaction design and art than in dance and performance studies. And it's true, this is where, I mean, it's changing. It's a shifting paradigm now, but really a lot of audience the kind of critical frameworks, the aesthetic frameworks have come out of interaction design and sort of art, or the installation side of art. And then finally, what does the technology reveal about the possibilities of human movement? Here we have the gorgeous Oscar Schlemmer's Tradition Ballet. I love that. Take, for example, a projected image representing a dancer with bird wings. What kind of embodied responses do we have? And what is the shape of our, what we call the kinesthetic empathy? What we feel when we watch another move. Yeah. Do we have the sensation of flight if we see these projected bird wings on a dancer? What other imaginings emerge from this that a wingless dancer would not create? So this is really trying to get into the consciousness and perception and the full-bodied experience that's empathetic in relationship to bodies and media on stage. Yeah. The most important thing here is how our perceptual structure may be transformed. Seeing the possibilities of technology used in dance performance, dance technique, the theatre, leads us back to the very first relationships between movement and machines, whereby new technologies were intended to extend human capacities in labour-oriented activities. And as for the aesthetic realm, scholar Steve Dixon has this to say: the use of new technologies in performance is an extension of a continuing history of the adoption and adaptation of technologies to increase performance and visual arts aesthetic effect and sense of spectacle. Its emotional and sensorial impact, its play of meanings and symbolic associations, and its intellectual power. So there's a lot more to do in this area, and as scholars, and because it's really it hinges upon even the technology and the development of technology, which has slowed down incredibly after there was quite a spike in what certain things could do. They're really for young theatre makers, and I speak to you, young theatre makers, and use of technology, to be doing it mindfully and with a real sense of the intervolving the audience at every step of the making in your collaborations, no matter how sophisticated you go, or whether you're using simple things like well, it's not so simple to use any kind of technology in your performance, even lighting. So that's all I have to say about that for the moment. The last slide here is the essay question, which is now up on Moodle. Do we need technology to aid our imaginations in the theatre? Do technology events in the theatre open a road to dreams and remembrances more than words or text can do alone? Discuss with at least reference to 2 works that involve some form of technological media. So there's a question if you're interested in this world of where bodies meet technology.